Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Thursday, January the 29th, 2026. Like yesterday, I want to talk about Mercury and Venus. So, yesterday we had Mercury and Venus making semisquares to Saturn. And now today we've got Mercury and Venus making semisquares to Neptune. And, this set of aspects is important, not just because we've got two aspects happening at the same time. Mercury and Venus, are together, they're forming a conjunction, but also it's close to the Aries point. Neptune is at 0 degrees Aries. Mercury and Venus are at 15 degrees Aquarius. 15 degrees Aquarius is 45 degrees from the Aries point. The Aries point, it is the world point. So, this set of aspects is likely to have an impact on all of us. It's likely to have an impact on the world in which we live. But before I go into detail about this set of aspects, I want to consider the broad astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Thursday, January the 29th, 2026. And here is the chart for today, set for noon New York time, as usual. So as far as what is going on, we have the moon in late Gemini. So you can see that the moon is making in late Gemini it's making a square to Saturn. It's applying to a square of Saturn, and it's also, what else is it doing? It's making a sextile to Chiron at the beginning of the day, and it's going to be making a square to Neptune, and then it moves into Cancer. So the moon moves into Cancer today at sort of 10:30 in the evening. I think it's 10:32 p.m. London time. So if you're in Europe or Africa, right at the end of the day, the moon moves into Cancer, but by and large it is a moon in Gemini day. If you are in the Americas, then late afternoon, early evening, the moon will move into Cancer, and so that does create a change. Moon moving into Cancer, we get planet moving into a water sign. Remember, we don't have much in water at the moment. We've just got Saturn in Pisces. So, moon moving into Cancer, making a sort of mutual reception to Jupiter by, what is it? Moon moving into Cancer. That's still Jupiter's moon moving into Jupiter's exaltation. Well, it's not really. It's not a mutual reception to Jupiter. Sorry. But still, it's moving into a sign in which Jupiter is exalted. So I think that moon in Cancer, and it's in its own sign, of course. So I think that moon in Cancer perhaps makes things easier. Things are flowing more, and additionally, it just provides some water, because there isn't much water around, as I've just said. With Saturn in. With just Saturn in Pisces as well as the North Node. Now, as far as the main aspects are concerned, well, we have a conjunction between Mercury and Venus. So Mercury and Venus are exactly conjunct at around 15 degrees Aquarius. So that is an important degree, 15 degrees Aquarius, because it is making a 45-degree aspect to 0 degrees Aries. So it's close to the Aries point. It is very much about how we can communicate, and how we can communicate the fundamental nature of who we are, especially on a creative level. So it is a great aspect, that Mercury-Venus conjunction, and I think that Aquarius is an interesting sign, and certainly a very creative sign, and an independent-minded sign for Mercury and Venus to be in. And is it artistic? Well, it could well be artistic, because it's making a semi-square to Neptune. Neptune at its best is about the imagination. It's about artistic ability, what we can bring down from the collective and perhaps turn into something real, something tangible, something we can look at. So I think there is a good side to it, but Neptune can be confusing. Mercury's semi-square Neptune, Venus semi-square Neptune. We might get the wrong idea about things. We might be very sure of ourselves, and it might not just be us getting the wrong idea about things, it might be everyone else. And additionally, we got the moon eventually makes a square to Neptune right at the end of the day. So there is a strong Neptune feel at the moment. And I think today, maybe the first day when we really recognize or can realize that something has happened. Neptune has moved into Aries. There's a lot of emphasis on Neptunian things. And we're already kind of seeing it. I mean, Neptune rules gas. I was just listening to the news, and apparently, over the last few weeks, the price of liquefied natural gas has doubled. I mean, doubled. I mean, that's quite serious. And there's all sorts of games with gas. The European Union absolutely saying they're no longer going to take liquefied natural gas imports from Russia. They're going to rely on America, perhaps to a lesser extent Abu Dhabi, but it is becoming an issue, and so maybe that is telling us how Neptune is working out. Neptune in Aries, big ideas about gas, and of course, Aries, Neptune, you might be oil. I did see the oil price went up quite a lot yesterday. I don't know how things are going to develop from now on. I don't make financial predictions here, or at least I'm very careful about it. So I'm not telling you what the oil price is going to do, but there is certainly a Neptunian feel to what is going on at the moment. So that is the picture for today. I mean, the broad picture. I'm sure I've missed something out. And if we set the chart for Sydney, Australia, so here is a chart for Sydney, set for noon, and you can see that the moon is clearly in Gemini, in the middle of Gemini. So the moon in the middle of Gemini. Okay, moon's going to be in Gemini all day long. If you're in Australasia and East Asia, it is making a trine to Mercury and Venus. So if you are in Australasia or East Asia, I think that perhaps that's one of the more important aspects of the day. If the moon is trine Mercury and Venus, it might feel that something is moving. It's in air signs, so it's quite easy to express yourself, but not in a way that is necessarily intense. It's just about being able to tell people what's on your mind, and also just being able to be verbally creative and be able to talk about whatever projects you're involved in a way that is quite convincing, that puts yourself in the best possible light. And then there is the heliocentric view, putting the sun at the center of the solar system. So the Earth is at 9 degrees 48. The Earth is at 9 degrees 48 Leo. I don't think making any major aspects. And at the same time, we have Mars now in Aquarius. Mars making a sextile to Neptune, and then moving on to making a sextile to Saturn. Mars also moving in on that conjunction between Mars and Pluto. So geocentrically we're through with the Mars-Pluto conjunction. Okay, it's still pretty close, but it's separating. But heliocentrically, the Mars-Pluto conjunction is continuing to get stronger, and that Mars-Neptune sextile is really perhaps making its influence felt in a positive way, I hope. I mean, Mars sextile Neptune could be putting our energy into interesting and perhaps rather ethereal things. But it's a heliocentric aspect. We can if we want. It's an energy that is available to us. So if you want to put your efforts into something spiritual, maybe you can. Of course, there is a downside to Mars sextile Neptune. Mars sextile Neptune can be about putting one's energy into something that is fundamentally a waste of time or is a distraction. But it is, it is a sextile. There is a certain amount of effort to the sextile, and then of course Mars, having made that sextile to Neptune, moves on and makes a sextile to Saturn before making the conjunction to Pluto. So perhaps Saturn will be able to bring things down to Earth. That would be the best way of looking at the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Saturn-Neptune. Well, Neptune is kind of all over the place, and perhaps it needs Saturn to provide a degree of structure and discipline. So that's the broad picture, and now it's time to look at things from the perspective of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Thursday, January the 29th, 2026. Aries. On one hand, things are going quite well. I think that you have a natural fluency to you. You can get on with pretty much anyone. So in terms of your social endeavours, I think that you can be effective. And so if you need to talk to anyone about pretty much any subject, I think you can do a good job. But you might feel that something is changing, that maybe as time goes on, things aren't necessarily quite so easy. And yes, people are there, but you are starting to have your doubts and your concerns. Maybe it's just about the realization that maybe not everyone can be trusted, or not everyone has the same level of enthusiasm as you. I mean, you are someone who can be very enthusiastic, and you have a lot of sort of get up and go. But is that necessarily going to be shared? And it can be quite a lot of effort if other people are dragging their feet. They can tell you everything's great. They can verbally show enthusiasm, but what about the results? And there may be a certain issue there with the results. There could be, for example, a lot of talking, but nothing actually happens. So in fact, Aries, in spite of your social abilities and your good-naturedness, I mean, you can be good-natured, but in spite of all that, you might be thinking that other people, through their attitude, they're just slowing things down, and you're kind of thinking that maybe people are afraid of something. You're not quite sure what they're afraid of, but maybe it's a reflection of what's happening all around us. There is a lot of fear around us, especially now that Neptune is making this conjunction to Saturn. I mean, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is getting closer and closer, and that may be part of what you are picking up on. So I think it's important to accept that everyone has their limits. You can't expect everyone to do everything. You can't even expect people to honour all their promises. They might have plenty of good intentions, but really is it going to amount to anything? So given all of this, Aries, it might be best if you simply do things in your own way. Yeah, you could try to stir things up. I mean, there is a sextile aspect between the moon and Chiron, and that might give you the opportunity to make an impact, to stir things up, to get people to pay attention to you. But for how long? Yeah, you can get an immediate reaction, but it might just peter out and just all come to nothing. And so if you do things on your own, or increasingly do things on your own, I think just as the day rolls on, just don't feel that you are in a position where you have to rely on anyone. And then, as the moon moves into sort of late Gemini, starts to move into Cancer. I mean, late this evening in Europe, earlier if you're in the Americas, the moon will move from Gemini to Cancer. That might be a time to really slow things down, certainly in terms of your expectations, and to recognize that perhaps it is all down to you, and it always was down to you. Yeah, you had ideas about what other people could do, what other people could contribute, but you're now realizing that it's not quite as easy as that. But if you are in a position where you are only relying on yourself, then what can go wrong? Taurus. The main aspect today is a conjunction between Mercury and Venus, and this Mercury-Venus conjunction, I think, is important. It's important for you, and it's important for the whole way in which you try to express yourself. I mean, not try. I mean, you can, and you can be very clear about who you are, what you want, and what you can do, and you can really focus at the same time on your ambitions, on the things that are important to you. So Taurus, think about your creative self. Think about what you can make happen, the things that you have expertise at. It can all come into being, and you can express it, and it's not just something vague. I think that if you're doing something of practical importance, for example, if you're working today, then I think that you can be very effective. You can have a sort of a clear idea about what needs to be done, what you should be doing, what you are trying to create. And I think that in the process, you can get a lot of support and perhaps recognition as well. However, don't be distracted. One thing that we do have today is we have some semisquares involving Neptune. So Mercury and Venus. Yeah, they are making semisquares to Neptune. And so something could distract you. You might have it all in place. You've got the plan. Everything is in order. But just something crops up. And you feel you have to respond to it. And it's always that distraction that can spoil everything. And so I won't say don't be distracted. Don't allow yourself to be distracted. Ignore everything. Put on a set of blinkers. No, it's not. It's not like that. You can see how things could go wrong, how you could be pulled off the straight and narrow. You can see all of that, but you don't have to fall for it. So, Taurus, quite a lot of self-discipline, could really matter today. Really thinking about, who you are and what you're trying to achieve. And, sometimes, it is good to be aware of the distractions, good to be aware of how things could go wrong, because, that is telling you something about, how the world is. And there is, of course, a different way of looking at it. I mean, I've said that, this Mercury-Venus conjunction can be very artistic, very creative. That's just a constant theme of this conjunction. If you work in the arts, or anything to do with making things, where imagination matters, this Mercury-Venus conjunction is particularly useful. And maybe the semisquare to Neptune will just get you in touch with something that is far removed from your own everyday life. And just because you're in touch with it doesn't mean to say that it's going to overwhelm you. And, for example, if you're painting a picture or writing a poem, or just making something where, the sort of artistic quality matters, and if you need to be imaginative, I think that the Neptune can help you. And so perhaps Taurus, if you can show some discipline but some openness, the Neptune may just be telling you about what people want, what's important to them. And so perhaps you will have your finger on the pulse, but you still have to be very careful, because it is easy to get so badly distracted that you get lost, and that is, of course, not something that we want to happen. Another point about Venus is that it's on the Aries point. I mean, it's making a 45 degrees. It's making a 45-degree aspect to the Aries point. And yet the Aries point, it is the world point. It is about everything around us. It's about where humanity is going. And so that's another reason to think that you are really very much in touch with it all. And I think that that's perhaps something that you can tune into. So yes, so today, Taurus, there are certainly dangers, but if you can ignore those dangers, well, not ignore those dangers, be aware of them, and perhaps see how they could also be opportunities, provided you don't fall for it. I mean, that's the key point, not falling for it. And keeping channels open and using your imagination, but not being overwhelmed by your imagination. You don't want to be too imaginative. So if you handle things correctly, Taurus, I think it can be a very useful day. Gemini. Well, I was talking to Taurus, and I was talking to Taurus about Neptune, and Gemini, I have to talk to you about Neptune as well, because there is a conjunction between Mercury and Venus today, and Venus is, of course, the ruler of Taurus. Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, and they're coming together, and that does give a Venus feel to the day. But also Mercury is making the semi-square Neptune along with Venus. So Neptune can be a confusing energy, but it needn't be such a problem. And I think that you have an opportunity to handle it, and you just have to make sure that you keep in mind what you are trying to achieve. Now, as far as this conjunction between Mercury and Venus is concerned, as I said, I think that it's something pretty fortunate. It allows you to find new aspects of yourself. It's not an aspect which wants you to be closed-minded. I think you have to be open to all possibilities and all opinions. Mercury conjunct Venus. Well, Venus may represent another person with interesting ideas, someone perhaps you should listen to. Not just because it's good to talk, good to listen. It's because someone has got got a perspective to offer. You may have all of the answers, or you may think you've got all of the answers. That's more like it. I mean, you might think you've got it all sorted out, or that you are starting to get it sorted out, but the reality might be different. There may be gaps in your knowledge, things you're not aware of, and right now there are opportunities to understand what is going on and perhaps to educate yourself. And you can educate yourself in many ways, but one way of educating yourself is through another person. So it's very important today to get as many perspectives as possible. And ideally you should be spending time listening to people who are sort of independent-minded and original, because you might learn something. Now, those people could be anywhere. I mean, they could be people you meet face to face. It could be people you know very well. It could be people you spend all your time with. But it could be, I don't know, it could be people you meet on YouTube. It could be anyone. It could just be something from the outside which it just gives you a different view, and a view that you actually need. And at the same time, Mercury's conjunction to Venus should give your artistic abilities a boost. You know, it really is an artistic aspect. It is about what you can do well, what you can create, and yes, it's semisquare. It's semisquare Neptune. So semisquare Neptune, Mercury semisquare Neptune, for sure, that is a very artistic aspect. So if you have any artistic abilities, you know, now you can really bring them into the fore. But Neptune can also be about confusion. Now, I have said just now that you can benefit from other people's perspectives, and you have to use some judgment there. Some people are worth listening to. Perhaps it's essential that you listen to them, but other people are not worth listening to. And Neptune moving into Aries can represent social confusion. You not necessarily knowing how to respond to certain people, particularly perhaps if you don't know them well, or if we're just talking about not individual people, but just the group, the collective, and you might just not know what's going on, and in the process you could make mistakes. I think there is a real chance you make mistakes, provided you might make mistakes if you focus on the wrong things. So it's important that you're able to separate, the sacred from the profane. What is sacred? Well, it's sacred at the moment for you to be able to be in touch with things that represent the future, that represent some higher way of being. Profane, well, anything that's profane. Well, profane is everything that is outside the temple. It's not in the temple. It's the opposite of sacred. And if you get involved with that, well, anything can happen, and you could really get pulled away from the straight and narrow, and you could be inclined to make mistakes. But while all this is going on, Gemini, I think that part of you is looking for change. You're not happy with the way things are. I mean, you know that things are okay. You're making some progress, but part of you thinks that something really big needs to happen. The way things are is just grinding on. It's just not good enough. And of course, I'm speaking as a Gemini. I think I'm aware of that. That things are just not quite good enough. Something has to change. And I'm not projecting this on you, by the way. I think that this is how all Geminis should be feeling. You don't be complacent. And if you're not happy about something, well, accept that and just ask yourself, what needs to be changed, and additionally, be dynamic about it, and focus your attention and your energy on the right areas, and don't just change things for the sake of it. I mean, that would be a waste of time. And finally, Gemini, with this Mercury conjunct Venus, I think that in general, relationships should be fine, provided you make the right choices. If someone is interesting and original, then probably they're the right person for you at the moment. And so relationships should not be forgotten, but perhaps ask yourself, what is the function of a relationship? If you're spending time on a relationship just because it's comfortable, then that might not be such a good idea. But if you're concentrating on a relationship because it offers you something different, because it's something unique, but it does give you a unique perspective, then that's the kind of relationship that, at least in the short term, can really work for you. Cancer. The moon is kind of moving into Cancer. It kind of depends where you are. I mean, if you're in the Americas, then the moon will move into Cancer, late this afternoon, early evening. So, the last part of the day has the moon in your sign. If you're in Europe or Africa, it may be the last hour of the day. right at the end of the day, the moon moves into Cancer as you approach midnight. So it does kind of depend where you are. So it is about to happen, and I think that when the moon moves into Cancer, I think you're going to feel better. I think you need the moon to be in Cancer at some level, because there aren't so many planets in water signs. We've got Jupiter and Saturn in water signs. I think earlier in the video I kind of implied that Saturn was the only water sign. Of course, Jupiter and Saturn are always in water signs. Well, at the moment, Jupiter and Saturn, you've got Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces. So yeah, you've got those two planets in water signs, but there's nothing personal in water signs until the moon goes into Cancer, and so it might feel that you're kind of waiting for something, and the moon, as it moves through late Gemini, it may just feel that something is not quite ready, is kind of it's coming to an end, and you're not quite ready to move things through to the next level. And the moon in Gemini, it doesn't do very much. Certainly in late Gemini, in the end it makes a square to Neptune, having first made a square to Saturn, and so that may just say something about today. Just today might feel kind of unsatisfactory, and if you try to get anything done, particularly in a sort of outward going kind of way, trying to get other people to cooperate, just may feel that there just isn't the energy, and there just isn't the motivation, and it's just so easy for things to just come to a standstill. But it's not your problem, and it needn't be anything to worry about. And as I was saying yesterday, if you just focus on yourself and your own needs, I don't think that there'll be any problems. Things should be pretty straightforward. Now, Neptune is, of course, now in Aries. It's just moved into Aries. It sort of moved into Aries on Monday, moved into Aries. And today might be a day when you really start to feel the influence of Neptune in Aries, because Mercury and Venus are making semisquares to Neptune right now. And so you might have sort of ideas about your ambitions and your aims for the future, which may be sort of difficult to pin down. That something needs to change, and I think the Mercury and Venus are telling you that, and it could be that this Mercury-Venus conjunction today is it's a very creative, intelligent aspect, this conjunction between Mercury and Venus, and it really reminds you of what you are able to do. You can feel it, but are you able to actually put it into action, or are we talking about something that is kind of semi-abandoned? And that might be your concern, Cancer. You might feel that something has been ignored, and it's perhaps been ignored for too long, and you're thinking that as it's been ignored for so long, how's it ever going to be able to get itself together? How are you ever going to integrate it back into your life? And with Mercury and Venus making the semisquare to Neptune, that feeling may be stronger than usual, and it might just be a case, Cancer, that you really have to sort of dive deeply into yourself. Maybe move to the sort of the center of your consciousness, if that's possible, or the center of your unconsciousness. Really deep down, go deeply into yourself, so that you can actually find what you're looking for. Find perhaps something that has been ignored and has been discounted, and you haven't regarded it as being important, but you kind of know it now is important. And perhaps that's to do with Neptune in Aries, and it may need to be repaired. Or it's perhaps something has been it's been ignored so long, it might be in bad shape, but it's not ruined. So so think, Cancer, about what that might be, and you're going to have plenty of time to bring it out into the open. I mean, Neptune moves into Aries, moves through Aries for a long time. It moves through Aries until the late 2030s, and this is asking you to go further and to really look deeply into yourself and to think about what might be possible. Leo, you're right now feeling that you want something to happen. You're very intent about creating effects, creating results for yourself, and I think that this is definitely something you can do. And essentially, perhaps it's about having powerful thoughts. I mean, your mind is on good form, and you have a lot of ideas, and you're able to present these ideas very, very effectively. And so don't think that people aren't going to listen. I think they really are going to listen. Because you have got something. You've really got something to contribute here. And just because you don't feel that you have an influence, yet that doesn't mean to say that that's true. As soon as you try to have an impact, then straight away things start moving. Of course, you've got to get your approach right. We have all these planets in Aquarius. So many planets in Aquarius, and Aquarius is, of course, your opposite sign. And with these planets in Aquarius, you do have to think about the other. What other people are doing, what they're feeling, and you have to understand their weaknesses as well as their strengths. But because of all of this, you really can have an influence, and people can and will listen to you. But you just have to make an effort. And so don't think that things are hopeless, that this is a situation where no one is listening, but it's all about other people, it's not about you. That's simply not true. You can almost sort of leverage the people around you, so that perhaps they do in the end do things your way in the end. And so it's certainly a time for Leos to be clever. You can be clever, but you also have to be quite subtle and try your hardest to look at things from sort of an emotional perspective. Now, the reason I'm saying that, or one of the reasons I'm saying that, is because the Sun is making a semi-sextile to the North Node. So the North Node is in Pisces, and Pisces as a sign represents many of the things which Leo doesn't immediately feel comfortable with. I mean, Leo and Pisces are completely different signs. Yet, for you, Pisces, to an extent, represents a way forward. It is about understanding the emotional side of things, being able to go deeply into them, and to sort of be aware of the fundamental complexities. And so with Sun semi-sextile North Node, you are challenged to do that, and somehow you have to sort of integrate these complexities, because those emotional complexities right now are the key to your power. And as I've already said, you can be very sensitive to other people, you can be manipulative, you can be clever with words to make things happen your way. So overall, Leo, you are in a strong position. I mean, there's no doubt about that. You are in a strong position, provided you get it right. You have to accept that other people are there. You have to accept that other people have their own way of doing things. It's not about being always direct and obvious. You have to be subtle, and you have to be aware of what's going on in people's minds, and not feeling that you always have to be initiating. Sometimes you let other people initiate. You let them make the first move, and then you can switch things round and be able to seize the advantage. Virgo. There is a possibility, Virgo, that things get a bit confusing. I mean, there's a lot of confusion flying around today, and it's not just about you. We have got Mercury, which is your ruler, is making a semi-sextile to Neptune. Mercury's in Aquarius. It's making. Sorry, did I say semi-sextile? I meant semi-square. Mercury making a semi-square to Neptune. So Mercury is making a semi-square to Neptune, 45-degree aspect, and this semi-square is potentially rather difficult. You might be trying to get things together, organize yourself, and making sure that everything's in order, perhaps in a typically Virgoan way. Although right now you can really use your intelligence. There's no doubt about that. I mean, Virgo is an intelligent sign. It's a sign that's ruled by Mercury, and your brain, by and large, is on pretty good form. But that semi-square to Neptune could potentially be undermining. It could perhaps represent an interference, something coming in from the outside, and you're trying to understand it, and it's not easy. And you had your idea about how things should be carefully ordered, and then just everything suddenly becomes a complete mess, and that's obviously not what you wanted. But at the same time, you have to be able to deal with a certain amount of confusion, but without losing your cool and without losing the plot. Yeah, there are things going on that you need to take into account with Mercury semi-square Neptune, and if you can do that, be open, be flexible, but always keep in mind what's important, then you should be fine. And Mercury is not just making a semi-square to Neptune, it's also making a conjunction to Venus. Now, Mercury conjunct Venus, is a good aspect, and it does give you the ability to really present yourself in the best possible light. You can present your intelligence in the best possible light. You don't have to keep your intelligence to yourself. You can be quite free and open about it, and people will understand what you can do. And it may be that you have to put in some work here. I mean, it is actually a day, Virgo, when hard work is likely to be rewarded in the end. Not necessarily while you're doing it, but you are building something up. And just, I think it's important. It's important to have a plan, but it's also important that your plan is flexible enough to deal with things, as they crop up. Things can happen that you weren't necessarily expecting, and then you have to work out what to do next. And so it's it means that when something does happen that wasn't expected, what you weren't expecting, it's just important you don't panic. It really does matter that you are able to just accept it, and accept that things aren't simple, and just move on, and just keep in mind the plan. And if that plan is flexible and it's not tied to expectation that people are going to behave in a particular way at a particular time, if you can deal with some uncertainty, then I think that things should be okay. And also, you might be surprised by your own emotions and your own responses and reactions. You might think that you're going to respond in one way, but you find yourself responding in a different way. And that might be the surprise. It might be the disruption. So you thought it was going to be straightforward, but maybe, for example, you might suddenly have a negative response. You didn't think you're going to respond negatively, but you do. So how do you deal with a negative response? A negative response might just be a gut reaction. This might be telling you that you are not happy about something. And if you're really not happy about something, you shouldn't do it. On the other hand, sometimes negativity can be not very helpful. You might have a negative response to something that you really should be doing. So do monitor your own feelings, and also monitor the chaos and disruption that may be imposed upon you by the outside world, and don't be fazed by it. And if you have a plan that is clear but not too clear, then I think that you'll be able to proceed with it, and you'll be pleased with the results. And also with this Mercury conjunct Venus, I think that support is available. Not everyone is useful, but I think some people are useful. If there are people that understand your priorities, there's some people that don't, and that should be avoided. But the people that understand your priorities, they are there, and you're in a position to really benefit from their presence. Libra. Venus is an important planet in the world of Libra, obviously, because Venus is your ruler, and Venus is making a conjunction to Mercury, and it's making a conjunction to Mercury in Aquarius, and it's on the Aries point, or rather it's 45 degrees from the Aries point, making a semi-square to the Aries point. So Venus really is in focus at the moment, and that should be a good thing. It means that you can not just be yourself, but you can really show everyone who you are, what you can do. And I think that you should at the moment or be pretty artistic and imaginative, and once things are flowing freely, things are just starting to move in just a very natural and spontaneous way. Though I think, Libra, it's going to be quite important that you are in control. I think you've got to be in control all day long. I mean, not in control in an obsessive way. I mean, I'm not saying you have to be in control of your every movement and you have to be obsessive. I mean, that would in fact be self-defeating. But you have to be in control as far as other people are concerned, outside influences. And the reason is that Venus is making a semi-square to Neptune, and with that Venus semi-square Neptune, it's just possible that other people's reactions and impositions, may not be helpful at all. People may be a major distraction. Being a Libra, you try to be everyone's friend, you try to be reasonable, but if you're too reasonable, you can lose everything. I mean, you can lose track. You can find that there was something you could do well, you can't do well because you can't do it well because you're having to spend so much time worrying about other people. So outside pressures should, by and large, be ignored, or certainly they should be treated with great suspicion, because I think that by and large, Libra, you know what's important, you know what can be done, you know what should be done, and if you're able to ignore other people and not be distracted by them, then things will be fine. And it's particularly important that you don't allow anyone to make you feel guilty. You shouldn't be paying so much attention to yourself and your own needs. You have to listen to another person's problem, spend all day listening to another person's problem. You have to always put yourself second. I mean, that would be a bad idea, because I think that right now, is a time, with all these planets in Aquarius, including Venus, when you really need to think about yourself and your contribution. And Venus is semisquare the Aries point, so the Aries point is about the world, and you know what's happening in the world, and you certainly have a contribution to make. And so now is a time when I think that you can really do something spectacular. And at the same time, Libra, do think about your fundamental freedom. It is not a time to be held back. If there is anything holding you back, then you need to do something about it, because right now, Libra, you need to be free, and you have the capacity to be free. So if something is bothering you, something is restricting you, then it perhaps can be overthrown. You overthrow it, and everything changes. Things move your way. And so don't be satisfied with a situation that you regard as being second-rate, unsatisfactory. It's just holding you back. This is not the way it should be. And if you demand your freedom, if you exercise your freedom, then I think you're going to get really, really good results. Scorpio. I'm not sure if you're going to receive a great deal of sympathy and cooperation. I mean, you might be trying, but I think that it may be a case where it's best to do things on your own, because if you try to get other people's help, or if you try to become part of the social milieu, it just might be very unsatisfying. You could find that you're just being held back, and other people's attitude could really bother you. People are just not enthusiastic. They seem to be rather stuck, and they also seem to be rather confused, and they don't know what's happening. They don't know what's going on, and you may sense an underlying fear. Fear should never be underestimated. People are afraid. People are afraid of all sorts of things, all sorts of strange things. They might be afraid of authority. They might be afraid of government, not just central federal government, but local government. People may be afraid of things that they don't even know what they're afraid of, and that might be just something you notice. And so don't ask for too much. Don't have any expectations, because if you have expectations today, expectations of other people, then there's a good chance that those expectations are going to be dashed. You may see people for what they really are, and they could sort of fall short of the mark. So what do you do, Scorpio? Well, what do you do, Scorpio? Well, you basically dig in. That might be the best approach. I mean, that's kind of what you want to do at some level. Dig in. You're very focused right now on what is important to you, on your own boundaries. We're talking about fear. Yes, other people have fear. You have some fear yourself. You know that nothing is entirely stable, that nothing lasts forever, and it's best to hold on to what you have for the moment. Although by the end of the day, I think that you are starting to ease up. And if you're in the Americas, then by this evening the moon will be in Cancer, and the moon has been in Gemini. And with Gemini, moon in Gemini, there were things to think about. Maybe there were things to worry about. But when the moon moves into Cancer, you're starting to feel better. You're starting to feel that you have more freedom, and perhaps you can be more trusting, and people are perhaps going to be more cooperative, and additionally you're just going to be able to sort of carry yourself better. So if you do feel that things are quite stuck today, especially on a social level, I don't think the situation is going to go on forever, and I think sort of by this evening and certainly into tomorrow, the situation will be improving. Sagittarius, you want something to happen. Things haven't been happening in quite the way you had imagined for some time, and it is frustrating, and you are looking for action, and perhaps part of the problem over the last day or two is that you might have been sort of overly reliant on other people, what other people are doing, what other people are planning, and that's bothered you to some extent. But now that the moon is starting to leave Gemini, I think that you're perhaps feeling a greater sense of freedom, and also some intensity. This idea that something does need to happen. Almost that the world is asking you to do something. So what is it? What is it that needs to be put into action? It may not be entirely obvious, but remember, you are a Sagittarius, and perhaps part of your job as a Sagittarius is to make the key connections. There are connections that you have to make, that you should be striving to make, and you make those connections, and then it becomes absolutely clear what you should be doing. So once you do have that inspiration, that final inspiration, it takes some time. It is a time, Sagittarius, when inspirations that normally take a millisecond, they could take hours. It does take time. Everything is slowed down, and that is the way it is. I mean, there's nothing that can be done about it. So give yourself the time to make the connections. When you decide what actually needs to be done, you'll be in a position to act. Things aren't so bad. I mean, I know I've been a bit negative over the last few days, but you're able to start to sort the situation out. All by yourself. It is becoming clear. Well, all by yourself, to an extent. I don't want to exaggerate that. I mean, don't forget that Mercury is making a conjunction to Venus, and Mercury-Venus conjunction means that there is a place for you to freely express yourself, freely express what is important to you. I mean, that Mercury-Venus conjunction is taking place in Aquarius, and if you are very clear about what you want, and reasonable at the same time, although I think deep down you feel that action is required, it's not a good idea to show anger. You must try, if possible, to show a bit of reasonableness, a bit of open-mindedness, and the Mercury conjunct Venus may actually represent another person. Perhaps you have felt you were doing things on your own, and it was hard work. And over the last couple of days, I was indicating that many Sagittarians did want to be alone, but I don't think you have to be completely alone, particularly today. And I think that you can find some kindred spirits, people who understand you. You are on their wavelength, and they can bring something new to the table, something that perhaps hadn't occurred to you. So, don't give up on other people, because there seems to be at least one person out there who could really be of great assistance, and I think they could also be quite inspiring. Capricorn. Another day with the moon in Gemini, and the moon does leave Gemini late this evening if you're in Europe. I mean, slightly into tomorrow. I mean, in fact, if you're in California, the moon will move into Gemini, move out of Gemini and into Cancer this afternoon, and so moon moving out of Gemini into Cancer. I think that perhaps makes things easier. So later in the day and into tomorrow, but for most Capricorns, for most of the day, the moon is still in Gemini, and that means that you're just aware of the limitations upon you, and also what fundamentally needs to be done. And it's not that you're necessarily going to get the results you're looking for, but I think that slowly and surely you can move towards the achievement of your goals. I mean, through good organization. That's certainly something that you are able to do today, but don't expect immediate results. And so try to take it slowly. I mean, because if you try to force the pace, you could be disappointed, and also it's at times maybe difficult to know what's going on, especially on a material level. I mean, you look at what's happening at the moment, and there are no planets in Earth signs except for Uranus. Additionally, Venus is making a semi-square to Neptune, and so this Venus semi-square Neptune, it could be quite a confusing influence for you. There are things that you believe should be simple and straightforward, but they are not. And when it comes to money, all sorts of things might be going on. There might be a lot of claims about money, and people perhaps talk about money, but if you ask for specifics, no one may know what's going on. So money is an area that, if you want to get involved with money, as I think you might, I mean, money is important for many Capricorns. I mean, good management of money is important. And there is a Mercury-Venus conjunction right in the middle of Aquarius. So I think you can have powerful thoughts about money, and I think you're going to be good at organizing your finances up to a point. But we have this issue that Neptune is making a semi-square to Venus, and so someone maybe is trying to really muddy the water with that semi-square to Neptune. It might be that this is particularly the case when, for example, thinking about your own home and the expenditures relating to your home, and as well as your family. And so you're just not quite sure where the money is going, or what money is going to be needed for in the future. And so, in terms of household expenses with Venus semi-square Neptune, I would have said that you need to be quite honest about it. Think about what is being spent, whether certain expenditures are necessary. Maybe you've been spending too much money on heating or something else, and it would be a relatively straightforward matter to deal with it. But Neptune can represent money just kind of flowing through the cracks. You're not quite sure where that money is going, how it is being lost. And perhaps with Venus semi-square Neptune, you have a chance to really understand what is going on. And it's not just Venus semi-square Neptune. It's we've got Mercury semi-square Neptune. And Mercury semi-square Neptune might be about confused ideas, but it also might be about you deciding that enough is enough. And so, from a financial point of view, Capricorn, it's important to be realistic, and perhaps it's important to be tough and to just look at where there is unnecessary expenditure. But I think in the end, if you make the effort, I think that you can understand what's going on. Yeah, it's hard work, but there may be a lot of resistance. But by the end of the day, you can have a much clearer idea about what needs to be done. Aquarius, the moon continues moving through Gemini. Gemini, great sign for the moon to be in. From an Aquarian viewpoint, you may be thinking that this is a time when you can really show the world what you can do, especially as we also have a conjunction between Mercury and Venus. And remember, Mercury and Venus are in Aquarius. And so that Mercury-Venus conjunction gives you, a great deal of ability. You can act in a way that is very intelligent, and you can focus on your real genius, and you can demonstrate your genius as well. But this Mercury-Neptune conjunction is semisquare Neptune. So you've got Venus semisquare Neptune, Mercury semisquare Neptune, and so there could be perhaps something a bit difficult to understand about that. So, for example, Aquarius, you might believe that you're being very clear about something. You are telling everyone who you are, what you're capable of doing. It seems obvious to you, but there might be a misunderstanding somewhere along the line. Just something about the way you communicate, you give the wrong impression, and the results are not as good as they should be. So this does mean, Aquarius, that if you are going to sort of present yourself and what you can do, you do have to be clear about it. And maybe you shouldn't even try to explain, because as soon as you try to explain something, the very words that are used to explain yourself can trip you up. And it might just be better to just to demonstrate rather than to explain. Explanations could just be like fog, and so you show the world what you can do. You show your intelligence, you show your genius, you show your creativity, but you don't try to put it into words. You just do it, and it might not be something you entirely want to do, because you don't necessarily feel the inspiration, you don't feel the impulse. But if you just act in a way that is free and spontaneous, then I think it should work. And additionally, Aquarius, I think that your ability at the moment to just get on with people in a general way without having to try, is pretty good. I think that you're optimistic enough, you're enthusiastic enough, and at the same time, I think most people are, at the very least, prepared to give you a chance. And I think people, by and large, are fairly good-natured at the moment. And it's not necessarily the case that they're good-natured overall, but maybe they're good-natured when it comes to dealing with you. So I think that from a social perspective, I think that you have a certain amount of good fortune there. So I think things look pretty good, but I just think it's important probably not to talk too much. But I kind of think you're going to want to say something. I think you have got a lot to say, but it's just that if you do say what's on your mind, the words might not come out right. I mean, the words might come out right, but still someone doesn't understand them and they misinterpret you, and that would be a shame, and I think it would also be unnecessary. Pisces. Well, Pisces, it's another day with Moon moving through Gemini. I mean, Moon is getting ready to move into Cancer. I mean, if you're in the Americas, late afternoon, this afternoon, early evening, in fact, late afternoon. Okay, in Chile. If you're in Chile, for example, the Moon will be in Cancer. Will move into Cancer, I think, at 7:32. So that's early evening. But in the United States, this afternoon, the Moon moves into Cancer, and from a Pisces perspective, that's something to look forward to. I think you'll enjoy having the Moon in Cancer. Probably better for the Moon in Gemini. Particularly late Gemini. I just think that with the Moon in late Gemini for most of the day, it just feels that things aren't necessarily moving. Okay, in Australia and New Zealand, it's kind of different because the Moon is going to be earlier in the sign. The Moon will be making a trine to Venus. It will be trine to Mercury, and so I think that if you're in if you are in Australasia or East Asia, then things should be easier, and you'll find a way of just being able to express yourself, but without compromising anything, without compromising very much. So you can do that. But if you're not in Australia, if you're in the Americas, it might just feel that things just aren't necessarily going anywhere. And it's not just you, it might be other people as well. Mercury and Venus, they're making semisquares to Neptune. And so people might be very present. It might be that you're really thinking about them. You can see what people are doing, and it seems that they should be doing something, but somehow they're not. And so that is not particularly satisfactory. It's not particularly satisfactory. Especially as right now, Pisces, you do feel that something needs to happen. You want something to move, and it almost feels that the world is asking you to make things move. That you're being pushed to make things move. But where? Where is the opportunity? The opportunity is there. It may not be there right now, but I think you're slowly coming towards an understanding of what needs to be done. But I think that today, particularly while the Moon is in Gemini, it may just be difficult to know what is required of you. But I mean, things are going to change. I think that when the Moon moves into Cancer, you can be much more direct, and I think that you can perhaps understand what it is that you need to be doing. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now it's time to look at things from the viewpoint of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Thursday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 48, which is the well. The well is, it's quite a passive hexagram. The well is always there. It doesn't move. It just has to be there. I mean, if there's no well, no one can drink. Everyone dies. We need sustenance, and in particular, we need water. And the well represents perhaps the things which we always have. Some things we lose, some things we have at a particular time, and we let go of them. But the well is consistent, and we shouldn't forget that we're getting this hexagram at the same time as Mercury is conjunct Venus, and Mercury conjunct Venus, as I'll be describing sort of in a moment, is an aspect which is very creative. It's about our natural talents, our natural abilities which are always there. It doesn't matter how long we leave them. We can not touch them for decades. They're still there, always there, like the well. They can be abandoned. They can be misused. They might need to be updated, but they're still there. And they still have a use. It doesn't matter how technology changes, AI, all this kind of stuff that is supposed to make everyone redundant. Doesn't matter. Certain things last forever. We carry them. And you could say with the well, we carry them from one incarnation to the next, if that's what you believe in. It doesn't change. So that's perhaps what the focus is today. And there is a lot going on, because with the well we have 4 moving lines. Moving lines in I Ching, they are about action, they are about changes. After all, the I Ching is the book of changes, and so we have 4 changes, and we have the bottom line moving, we have the second from the bottom line moving, we have the 5th line moving, and the 6th line moving. So as far as the bottom line is concerned, it indicates that we have some ability, something we can do well, but we haven't been using this ability. It's just been abandoned, and so you kind of have this image of a well which should be providing water, but it's broken. It's just full of mud. It's just become a swamp, and that's what the well should. That's not what the well should be. I mean, the well needs to be maintained. If it just is left alone, it just becomes full of mud and garbage, and it can't fulfill its useful function. And so, do think about that. What have you allowed to go into decay? We maybe, I don't know, it's not quite rack and ruin, but something has been abandoned, and this might be an ability you have, something you always have, and you just have ignored it. It could be something that you use all the time. I mean, it could be a material object that you need, but you haven't been using it. You need it, and you haven't maintained it, and maybe it's got full of dust, or it's been left outside, or it just needs to be fixed. Because the longer you leave it, the worse it's going to get. And but there is an optimistic message here. This is only the bottom line. It's just telling you what you need to do right now. Then, we have the second line moving, which it's kind of a similar picture. I mean, it's a kind of a bit of a development, though. I mean, with the second line moving, we can certainly see that there is clear water. I mean, that's better than just a pool of mud. But how do we get hold of this clear water? Because it says, the jug is broken, the bucket is broken. We can't access what's in the well. And again, this gives us an idea about how we've been misusing our abilities. We've got this thing. It's a wonderful resource. We can see the clear water, but we have no access to it. And I mean, I think that's a problem that many people have. I mean, it's not unusual to think that we've got special abilities, particularly now with Mercury conjunct Venus, and this is perhaps a challenge with Mercury conjunct Venus. And in fact, I think this I Ching is describing very well Mercury conjunct Venus, semi-square Neptune. Maybe Neptune does represent the fact that things have been abandoned, and so sort it out. I'm talking to myself as well here. I am part of this I Ching reading, but I'm also talking to you. And then the 5th and the 6th lines move. Very different. A note of clear optimism, clear water as well. So with the 5th and the 6th lines moving, we start to see the well come back into action. And with the 5th line, that's telling us there is clear water. It's there for all, and that's what the 6th line is telling us. So there is the hint here that the well can certainly be repaired. So in terms of what you can do, if you've been feeling that you have been neglecting any of your abilities, or if there's some object that you've been neglecting, something you've been allowing to get into a state of decay, now is a great time to do something about it. Because the I Ching it starts off being very negative with the 1st and the 2nd lines moving, and then with the 5th and the 6th, that's suggesting that you can get it together. So don't just think you've messed it up and that there's nothing you can do. You haven't. You can sort it out, and you can bring everything back online. You can bring yourself back online, and you can sort of make the most of everything that you are. Now, we do have 4 moving lines, so that means that we do move to a second hexagram, and the hexagram we move to is hexagram number 22, which is grace. I mean, that's a pleasant hexagram, not a dramatic hexagram. And so this might be saying that how we behave, we have to marshal our resources, make sure we are using our resources, but also appearances do matter. That's grace. It's not a very deep hexagram, but perhaps the first thing we need to think about, if we are trying to make the most of our abilities, is how it appears, what the covering looks like. It sounds trivial, but it does matter, and so we can get the well back online, and as we're doing it, we can perhaps present ourselves well, and that may be about being able to present our fundamental abilities, be able to talk about them. If we're trying to get other people's support, it is to an extent about appearances, but appearances unfortunately do matter. It's about the style rather than the substance, but it's just something we have to go through. But fundamentally today, I think it starts off with on a fairly negative note, because we're looking at how much we're sort of wasting what we have, but we do have a chance to bring everything back online and at the same time make it look good. And so now let's talk about the astrology. I am going to talk about Mercury and Venus, but there's one thing I did briefly want to talk about. I had a request. So the request was that I look at the horoscope of the state of Minnesota, because we have been having obviously all these issues and things going on in Minneapolis with the shooting of Alex Pretty, and I talked about that yesterday, and so the focus is on Minnesota, and okay, there are other states where people are upset about ICE raids and so on, but Minnesota does seem to be kind of in the eye of the storm. So the question is all of this impacting the state? So when you're talking about a state, you're talking about a state which it got its statehood on a particular date, and so turning back to the astrology, here it is. So here is the horoscope of Minnesota. So Minnesota became a state on May the 11th, 1858. I don't know what time it became a state. So I've just gone for noon, and I've set 0 degrees Aries as the ascendant. And the thing about Minnesota, I mean, I'm not going to talk long about Minnesota, is that Minnesota has Mars in Scorpio. So Mars was in Scorpio at the time of its statehood, and Mars was opposition Jupiter and opposition Uranus. So this may say something about the state. Mars opposition Uranus, and Mars opposition Jupiter, it's quite violent, and it could also be about the desire for freedom, perhaps the freedom from federal control, federal laws. And of course, I understand that when you're talking about Minnesota, I mean, I've never been to Minnesota, but my understanding of the state is that you've got an urban part of the state, which tends to vote Democrat, but you've also got a rural part of the state, which is kind of very different. I mean, that's a standard thing in the United States, isn't it? I mean, everywhere there is urban, rural. It's always a very sharp distinction. I'm in suburban Washington State. Washington State is people vote Democrat, but if you go to rural Washington, you don't have to go very far before you used to see the Trump signs. People will overwhelmingly vote for Trump in rural Washington State, even though it's blue, and I'm sure I'm sure it's the same thing in Minnesota. So when we think about freedom, Mars opposition Uranus, Mars opposition Jupiter, people's desire for freedom, you might be looking at what's going on the streets of Minneapolis now, but you also have to think about the other side of Minnesota. It's got a large rural area, and probably many people in Minnesota perceive their freedom in a different way. Don't bother me, stay out of my way, and probably going to be relatively sympathetic towards Trump. So there are two ways in which that Mars opposition Jupiter, Mars opposition Uranus could work. Now, we don't know where the moon is. At noon, the moon is at 2847 Aries. I think it is likely that the moon is in Aries in Minnesota's chart. So that kind of adds to what we're seeing. So what was actually going on for Minnesota at the time of the shooting of Alex Pretty. So I've got the horoscope of Minnesota in the middle, and the horoscope of the time of the shooting on the outer wheel, and so it's kind of a Uranus issue. So Uranus was at 2730 Taurus. So Uranus was it had just passed the conjunction of Jupiter, the conjunction of Minnesota's Jupiter, and it was moving towards Uranus return. Well, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? So Minnesota is having its Uranus return. Uranus returns every 84 years. So it's Minnesota's second Uranus return. So Uranus return, so that would mean that Minnesota approximately came into being around 168 years ago. That sort of figures. So Minnesota's Uranus return is really manifesting, and Minnesota's Uranus return is so tied up with Mars because Minnesota has Mars opposition Uranus. So Uranus is aspecting opposition Mars. Uranus is wanting freedom. It's quite violent as well, can be quite violent, and so I think that is pretty clear. And Uranus right now is on Minnesota's Jupiter-Uranus midpoint. So Jupiter-Uranus, freedom. Get out of my way. I want to do what I want to do. If I want to have a particular approach to undocumented immigrants, this is how we do it in Minnesota, certainly in urban Minnesota, and it doesn't take kindly to the federal government getting in its way. So I think that Minnesota's horoscope does clearly say something about that. I did look at the horoscope of Minneapolis. I didn't find anything of any great interest there. So here's the horoscope for Minneapolis. So Minneapolis, I think, came into being when Minneapolis and St. Paul they came together and they unified, and I think that this is the chart for Minneapolis, and I didn't see anything massive going on, but it did happen at the time of a Jupiter-Saturn opposition. So Minneapolis, as a city, may just pick up on the Jupiter-Saturn cycle. I mean, I know that we haven't got riots at the moment. I mean, I know there were a lot of riots in Minnesota, sort of during COVID. That's right, and so that might be the sort of Jupiter-Saturn. So there's always that potential there, and in fact, Minnesota has got the Sun square Saturn, square Jupiter, conjunct Neptune. So you can see that Minneapolis it's quite a tense chart. And that may say something about Minneapolis, and I don't know what it's like to live in Minneapolis, but it is quite intense, and wants to take action. With that cardinal T square, Moon Mercury conjunction there as well. I don't know the time for Minneapolis is when Minneapolis came into being, but I think we can assume that there is approximately a Moon Mercury conjunction. And finally, we need to think about the governor of Minnesota. The governor is Tim Walz, who was, of course, he did stand to be vice president. He didn't do too well in his vice presidential debate against J.D. Vance. So how does this play with the governor? I mean, we don't have a time of birth for Tim Walz, but he is the head of state. And so what goes with Tim Walz might also go with the state in general. And, Tim Walz, he has a Mercury-Uranus trine in his chart. And I remember when he was chosen to be vice presidential pick, he was said how good he was at communicating, how he was a sort of a natural public speaker, and he could relate to ordinary people. It didn't kind of quite work out like that, but you can see with Mercury trine Uranus, he's in his horoscope. It's quite easy for him to communicate, and that was at 6. So when the shooting happened, Mercury was at 6 degrees Aquarius. So at 6 degrees Aquarius, Mercury was making a square to his Mercury. So Mercury square Mercury means that you've suddenly got something to say, and Mercury was also making a quincunx to his Uranus. And additionally, and perhaps more importantly, Mercury was sextile his Mars. So that is quite a fortunate aspect. And so and also transiting Moon. The transiting Moon was conjunct his Sun. So having Mercury sextile his Mars and transiting Moon conjunct his Sun, this really gave him an opportunity to just be himself, to be the governor. I think he's not standing again. Am I right? I mean, I don't know anything about Minnesota politics, but he's not standing again. But this really throws him back into the limelight, having that Mercury sextile Mars, Moon conjunct his Sun, and so he's got a sort of a wide Sun-Mars conjunction in Aries. So it really brings it out again. It allows him to sort of really project it on his own terms, because in a presidential election, debate against J.D. Vance, he was kind of perhaps outside his comfort zone. Now he's very much in his comfort zone. So you can see how this shooting has probably been of some benefit to Tim Walz. I mean, you never know with politicians. I think that politicians like to show their righteous indignation, but if you're a politician, it goes beyond life and death. It's all about what works, what gives you a boost. I mean, that's the nature of politics. It's not his fault, but I think that to a great extent, it has certainly helped, and it's certainly the transits are very much there, and it's allowed him to move to centre stage, and I think we can see that in his chart. And finally, I wanted to just quickly talk about the Mercury-Venus conjunction, which is semi-square Neptune. So here is the conjunction between Mercury and Venus. So it happens today at 10:17 a.m. and it takes place at 14 degrees 57 minutes. Now, that is within 3 minutes of 15 Aquarius. 15 Aquarius is exactly semi-square the Aries point. So it's on the Aries point. The Aries point is the global point. It's the world at large. It's the world around us. It's the planet on which we live. And so there's a lot of talking. And there is a lot of talking, and so you could say that it's very creative, and we can be very creative in a global context, and we can have ideas which have wide application. So, that looks good. But it is semi-square Neptune. Neptune is on the Aries point. Neptune is exactly conjunct the Aries point. So this creates a lot of confusion here. Mercury and Neptune are just tied. Mercury and Venus are just tied to Neptune. I've already said that this may say something about, oil prices of liquefied natural gas, both are connected with Neptune, and perhaps people are thinking about it, talking about it with this Mercury-Venus conjunction. So that is looking quite dynamic, I would have said, but very confusing. We are definitely living in confusing times, and I think that this Mercury-Venus conjunction, the fact that it is making the semi-square to Neptune, means that our minds are going all over the place. I think it's a time when a lot of us could make mistakes, but from an artistic perspective, it really is fantastic. Neptune is really with us. And so, I know that I'm inclined to see Neptune as a malefic, but it needn't be a malefic. And so we live in a world of, because so many things are happening, we can perhaps articulate it through art, writing, whatever. If you're into music, all that kind of stuff, it is creative. And so this might be, a creative sort of renaissance, if you want to see it in the best possible light. I mean, I know that this trouble is it's only lasting for a few days, but for example, I don't know, if you want to write a protest song with Mercury-Venus conjunction semi-square of Neptune, go ahead. That might be a good thing to do. The trouble is, of course, you've got ChatGPT, can do anything. I mean, you can ask ChatGPT to do a protest song. You can ask ChatGPT to write a sonnet for you. I don't know how people deal with that, because it's very good at writing sonnets. So I think it is an important aspect, and I think that we can see the importance when we put it on the dial. So if we put the Mercury-Venus, there's a Mercury-Venus conjunction, and we put it on the dial. There it is. So we put, we'll put 0 degrees Aries on the dial, actually. So because they're all at the Aries point. So there's Neptune, there's Saturn as well. So Neptune at 0 degrees Aries. 45-degree aspects are shown as oppositions on a 90-degree dial. So we can clearly see Mercury and Venus opposition Neptune on the dial, and it's also on a Uranus-Pluto midpoint. So Uranus-Pluto midpoint, well, Uranus-Pluto is about wanting change, wanting perhaps violent change, not being satisfied, with the way things are. And looking at if we look at the Uranus-Pluto principle in terms of how Reinhold Ebertin, in the combination of stellar influences, how he describes Uranus-Pluto, the Uranus-Pluto principle, he says the principle of Uranus-Pluto is the process of transformation, the collapse of the old order of things, the construction of the new, revolution. And so I think that this Mercury-Venus conjunction, is talking about perhaps the collapse of the old order. Things do seem to be changing. Things are not going to ever be quite the same again. So that is a way in which we can look at this. And the fact that Neptune's on the Aries point, Mercury and Venus are semi-square the Aries point, it's all linked with Uranus and Pluto. It is quite dramatic, and we may just see evidence that this kind of old order really is collapsing. So anyway, that's what I've got to say for today. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.